module, which I give the title is Basic Supply Chain Concept and Review. Last week, it's more to a review of the whole class and the whole supply chain modeling approach. Now we're focusing a little bit more on the supply chain itself. Okay, so a little bit of our view on supply chain management, and then we talk about how the supply chain strategy could help your business, your organizations to stay ahead or stay competitive. And later on, we break down if you are going to implement a supply chain strategy. There is a frameworks that can be really used to describe or break down the strategy well, which introduced by Professor wait, I forgot his name. So we will see the reference on the slides later on. And then several fundamental issues related to supply chains that later on lead us to the following topics in the following modules. Okay, so I'll just start the overview on supply chain management from this definition. Okay, these definitions were cited from the books of Professor Simchi Levy, and I can read it as follows. So supply chain management is a set of approach utilized to efficiently integrate supplier, manufacturers, warehouse, and store. So basically all the entities involved in the supply chain. For what? So that the merchandise is produced. Or merchandise can be maybe it's a products or a services. So that the products or service is produced and distributed in the right quantities to the right locations at the right time. So that's the goals for the supply chains in this perspective. In order to do what? In order to minimize the system-wide cost. So it's not just emphasize the customer satisfaction level, not only to just to reduce the cost, not only to maximize the profit, but the system-wide cost, the minimize the system-wide cost. Meanwhile, means that from supplier, all the activities from supplier to the delivery of those product or services up to the customers end customer, all those activities, the cost should be minimized. But we still need to satisfy some things called service level requirements. Okay, so those are the perspective of Professor Simsilevis that he wrote in his book. Meanwhile, the concept of supply chain management from the CSSMP, it's a councils and organizations of that also have interests on supply chain management. It's also provides certifications related to supply chain management. They were giving the definitions of supply chain management will be like this. It's encompass the plannings and the management of all activities. So not only particular set of activity, but all activities involved in sourcing and procurement, conversions, and all logistics management activities. So it also includes coordinations and collaborations with channel partners. Means if you are in the middle as a manufacturer, so involve coordination and collaboration with your supplier, intermediaries, and third-party service providers, and also the customers itself. So in a sense, supply chain management integrates supply and demand management within the across company. So integrate supply and demand within, inside, or across or outside companies. Okay, so those are the formal definition. Nowadays, even that I think this can be found from Professor Professor Martin Christopher books. So you can search his name and then find his book. So nowadays, in that books, it mentioned that business competitions now not only from one individual companies versus another individual companies. It is most likely a competition between supply chain. Okay, let's say this is a simple example of a phone. Two of the most biggest market share leader for a phone or smartphone industry, we can say that arguably or the Apples with their iPhone, as well as Samsung's with their Samsung Galaxy series. So if we see it in more details, it's not only it's iPhone versus Samsung's, but also all the supply chains that can help those products delivered to the end customers, including the the things that can also determines their the customer service level, like the availability of service center in the areas of the customer and so on, or the availability of stocks perhaps of the phone in the customer locations. So if you have weak link in the company in the supply chains, it can detrimentally affect the market standings of a company. So um, we should make sure the supply chain will become the significant competitive advantage for your delivery of your products. Okay. For example, if you want to have an efficient, and agile and reliable supply chain, okay, so efficient, agile and reliable, uh, so it means that you need to make sure the cost as well as the faster delivery and better responsiveness of your products availability in the market. Okay, so we can say for sure that effective supply chain management is a key that become a determinant of a success in today's globalized business environment. And here was the of supply chain in business. So we can say that based on the definitions provided earlier, the objective of supply chains is to maximize overall value generated along in the supply chains. Means that it's not only about reducing costs, but also increasing profits. Means that the overall value along the supply chains, it means that, oh, the end customer would appreciate our products more. And then meanwhile in the supply side, we try to minimize the cost as much as possible. So you can see that the definitions of a value here is defined is between the difference between the final products worth to the customer and the cost. Okay, how much the customer appreciate our products, and then the cost incurs in filling the customer request. Okay. And in order to maximize the value, so supply chain management seeks to also maximize these other factors, like maximize efficiency, but this one maybe maximize the cost reduction, minimize the cost, and then maximize the quality, maximize the delivery speed and reliability. Means the time to deliver would be as low as possible. Increase flexibility, innovation, and sustainability. And even so, simply say that the value mentioned here as the supply chain value where we can mention it as a net profits of the whole entire supply chain, which were the revenue generated from this supply chain process minus the expenses in the whole process involved. Okay, so this is just theory. So I guess that I can move on quite fast. And this is another diagrams that you will most often find if we talk about supply chain. All the entities being involved would be generically or commonly known as naming as follows, like we will have suppliers, suppliers of our suppliers, or until end tier suppliers, we can say it like that. And then we consider our company as the manufacturer or the producer of the service or goods. And then we will have several distributor we may or may not have, or we may go to retailers first before our products ends up in the end customer. Or some of the nowadays business were much more involved in form. Okay, so here's are key points that I need you to take away from this overview were like this one. Supply chains happenings because we have customer. Okay, if we don't have customer that consume our products, there is no need for the supply chain. So we can say that customer is an integral part of the supply chain. And supply chain, even though the naming is a chain, one process prior to another, and then one process following the another process, or companies involved. But it's more accurately actually defined in the term of supply networks, because one supplier may not only serve or supply for one manufacturer, can be for more. So one supply chain can connect it to another's like a networks. That's why supply chain network is sometimes also being used. And then here are typical supply chains stages, in which we will have suppliers. We can call our company as a manufacturer, then we will have a distributor and retailers, and finally end customer. Okay, and basically again, this is another review from uh, last week. Basically there are three things main flow in the supply chain. They are funds, products, or services, and then informations. Okay. um okay, next, the term of supply chains were actually not really new for now, for the current situations, but if we study supply chains in the early 90s, it may not be as popular as today because they have different terms for it. Okay, the term of supply chain were, I think, becoming more and more popular since 1980 to 1990s, and then fly from there to really become famous, and then being used in so many discussions. Okay, but prior to that, if you see here, the fragmentations originally were that supply chains, if they only consider about purchasing and materials managements, and then physical distributions. Okay, uh, materials purchasing and materials management consists of these several activities. Okay? And then physical distributions, some of them were also included here. Okay. And if you combine these two terminology or activities, they can also considered as logistics activities. Okay. And if you add logistics activity with several things like strategic plannings, adding some more information services, marketing and finance, then you have the terminology for supply chains. And even nowadays the supply chain is still expanding to become several more specialized supply chains, like we have terminology like green supply chain for some things that consider more about sustainability and things. And we have some things like lean supply chains that more have tendency to have emphasize on how we can efficiently implement lean tools for the supply chains. Or we also have digital supply chain and many more. So basically, digital supply chain is concentrate more on how supply chains can be managed better if we have a better information services function. Okay, next. Okay, if we talk about the activities in more details, there are several main activities such as product development, designing the supply chains, embedded the plannings and controls, operations and productions, delivery and distributions, even until returning the products. Okay, and here are several descriptions about those activity. For example, if you talk about product management in supply chains, product development in supply chains, what are those indicate? That's indicate the activities includes in some things like conduct market research, designing new product, involving supplier in the network designs and stuff. So basically, those are here are our examples for the supply chains elements and their main activities. Okay. Okay, now we move on to the strategy. So basically, things that I would like to emphasize here is that it is very important to have alignments between the supply chain strategy with your business strategy. So business strategy commonly being mentions in their competitive advantage strategy. It's a plan to utilize the products or several things in the organization to delight the customers or the needs of customer or customer segment. So make them satisfied with the product or service you have. Okay. In order to realize this supply chain strategy, this competitive strategy for your company, you need to support from your supply chain strategy. And then a supply chain strategy can be seen from their supply chain structure. What does it mean? Actually means actually like this. Okay, so let's say your competitive strategy would be the leader of one particular products in terms of their price. Let's say like that. You want to be the most known as the company that sell the one particular products with the best price possible. Okay, it's indicated with the cheapest price possible, put it like that. But in order to realize those competitive strategy, you need to have a supply chain strategy. And supply chain strategy will have the tendency to either it goes through the side of efficiency, or it goes through the side of responsiveness. Okay, or in between. So the sample that I mentioned earlier is actually it's more to the efficient strategy, in which if you want to have an efficient supply chain strategy, then you need to respectively reflects those tendency to efficiency in these two types of drivers. First, we have logistical drivers. Second, we have cross-functional driver. For example, oh, I want to have the products that in this particular product, I want to have the one that is the cheapest one. So in terms of facility, to have the products produced cheaper, so you may need to have a facility that is not many but can serve the customer well. Okay, so that will be more efficient. One big particular facility to support all of those supply chain strategy that you want, including the inventory, for example. Oh, if you want your products to be as cheap as possible, so you need to reduce the inventory, because inventory took your profit away actually in terms of products. And then you want to choose the most feasible transportation options in terms of the price. Okay, those are the logistical driver. Another things was cross-functional driver, in which they don't really have the tangibles component like the logistical drivers. Okay, here's are the examples of those supply chain frameworks. So supply chain strategy were embedded in the as competitive strategy embedded in the supply chain strategy, whether it's going to be more efficient or to be more responsive. It will be reflected in their supply chain structure. Here's, for example, okay, for the facilities, it will be related to the place where the inventory is stored and then assembled and fabricated. It's also consider about the production sites and the storage sites or the warehouse. Inventory, it's to consider the how many we need for the raw materials, work in progress, and so on. Okay, so you can read those slides. I think some of them will be appear in the quiz, okay, including this one. Information strategy, sourcing, and pricings. Okay, and for the final slides about supply chains overview, we will have a discussion about what is the one of the most common challenge in supply chains. Okay, since we're in the era of globalizations, it is very common. So we have our the entities that work together with us in our supply chains were located globally. Take example of iPhones. iPhone may have their production site there in China or here, as well as here. Let's say this one maybe in Mexico. And then in order to have to serve their customer well in many places around the world, they need to have several warehouses, right? Located maybe, this is just a representative, okay, not really the real data. So maybe North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, as well as in the Southern America. In order to deliver these products around the world, they need to have help from the carriers, from logistics perspective, and then that can be used to serve the customer, their end customer. Okay, if you are interested on more about this example, you can go to this video. There's that is a very interesting video to introduce you to a global supply chain. Okay, another things that become concern in supply chain management is that how can we handle uncertainty? Okay, uncertainty, there were a lot of things uncertains in this supply chain activity. In order to cope with those uncertainty, we need something called inventory. Okay, well, actually, if we can plan something very well, and then we know the value of certain variables more certainly, we may not need inventory. But it doesn't happen like that. So for example, here's this these figures really represents where does we need inventory. For example, if we need if we somehow happens to met the supply uncertainty, so you don't know there are variability on how many products your or raw materials your supplier can supply, so it's called supply uncertainty. Or it's sometimes relate to the we can call it the lead time of delivering supply from your supplier. Maybe it's located in Europe, for example, and then you want to consume the raw material from Europe here in Southeast Asia. So those are example of supply uncertainty. To cope with those, you need raw materials inventory related to your materials, right? And then another case is that after the products maybe go into your company, and then you need to produce it, becoming the end products. So you produce, partially have several work in progress material. However, you have issue with the machine, for example, or the human resources. Sometimes they produce not so good quality products, so you need to have several inventory ready to handle those internal uncertainty. Okay. And finally, because you don't know the demand, the certainty of the demands, yeah, it's often happen like that. So you need to have sometimes inventory of the end products. Okay. So those are two fundamental issue of supply chains. Yeah, that's all about it. Uh, we all stop the recording for the first session.